the 9 chord. It can be pretty, it can be sad, and it can be tense. Talking about the 9 chord today, in case you haven't guessed, how to properly construct 9 chords, and I'll kind of leave how to use them up to you. Before we take a look at the construction of the 9 chord, let's go back and let's take a quick look at just how to construct a normal chord and what that's all about. Alright, so just very briefly, if you need to get a deeper look at this, I did another lesson on this. It wasn't a video lesson, just a text lesson, but it's a lesson nonetheless on the website under the archives. Chords, let's just take a look at a major chord. A major chord is constructed using 3 notes. Let's take a look at the C, for example. And the C chord, or G chord or A chord, they're built using notes from their respective scales. And they're typically built in thirds. In C's case, we're going to use a C, and then its third, E, and then its third, G. So we're using the first note, the third note, and the 5th note of the C major scale to make a C major. You do the exact same thing with a G major, an A major, an E major, whatever, choosing the 1, 3, and the 5. Okay? That makes sense, right? Whenever you start using the degrees of the scale that are outside of those, then you're getting into some variations of the chords. You know, when you add in the 7th, which is the third of the 5th, that's when you're making a major 7 chord. So a C major 7 that's using the 1, the 3, the 5, and the 7, C major 7. When we use the 4 in there, then we're getting into suspended chords. When we use the 2, we're doing suspended 2nd chords. Today we're just going to talk about the 9s, okay? We'll just one thing at a time. And also the differences between major 9 and a major add 9. Respectively the minor 9 and the minor add 9. What's the difference between that? What makes it an add 9? What makes it a major 9? And finally, we're going to take a look at a dominant 9. That's going to be our jazzy chord of the afternoon. All right. Let's start with major 9. Basically, a major 9 is utilizing the 1, the 3, the 5, the 7, and the 9. It's really just using every other note, and then once you reach the octave of the scale, then you're going past that to the 9th degree, which is it's an octave higher than the 2nd degree of the scale. So the 2nd degree, that's a D, so you have a C and a D, therefore the 9th is also a D. It's just higher up, okay? So we're using the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. That's the chord construction of the major 9 chord. So if we take a look at C major 9, we're going to have a C, that's the 1, we're going to have an E, the 3, the G, which is the 5, the B, that's the major 7, and the D is the 9. So one way to play this is like that. I'll have the tabs up for these chords, by the way, on the website. That's using all 5 of those notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes, though, you can't use all the notes. Just you're limited. You can only play 6 notes at any given time at the most, and then you only have 4 fingers. So there are going to be times where you're going to have to omit notes. In the case of the C major 9, or any major 9 really, you can omit the 3rd. You can also omit the 5th to make an effective 9 chord. Major 9 chord, that is. So in this example here, example number 2, you have a C, an E, a B, and a D, and finally another E. There's no G here. That's the major 9 without a 5th. But notice that the integrity of the chord hasn't changed. Still sounds the same, right? So that's okay to omit the 5th. Also to omit the 3rd. Here's an example. This is a G major 9. This one using the 1, G, there's the 7, there's the 9, and there's the 5. There's not a 3, so there's no B. That's okay. Usually the 3rd makes it major or minor, right? Well, since we have a 7, that F sharp, that's taking care of the of that bass as defining this as a major chord. Okay, so C major 9 is definitely different than a C add 9. You're going to see if you've been playing guitar for any amount of time, you know that chord right there. That's the C add 9. That's just taking the C, the 1 3 5, the C E G, and adding the ninth in. So it's just a 1 3 5 9, as opposed to 1 3 5 7 9. In order to make it major 9, you have to have that 7 along with the 9. If you don't have that 7, then it's just an add 9. Make sense? Good. That's not a C2, by the way. I've seen it written as C2. It's only C2 if that finger's not there. A C2 is constructed using the 1, the 2, and the 5. So there's not a 3. It's just a 1, 2, and a 5. That's the difference there. All right, clear that up. Let's move on. All right, so that's the difference between major 9 and major add 9. Now let's look at the minor stuff. Spooky. Minor 9, just like major 9, we're going to be using the 1, 3, 5, 7 from the minor scale. So in relation to the major scale, the 3rd is flat and the 7 is flat. So we have, let's take a look at an example of the E minor 9. We're going to have, of course, the E. Then we're going to have the 3rd, which is a flat 3rd. That's going to be G. Then the 5 is B. And then a flat 7 is going to be D. So if you look at E minor 9, there it is. Kind of an interesting thing there. So, and if you take away that 7, take away that D right there, then you just have the minor add 9. Makes sense? So you got to have that 7 in there to make it minor 9. You take away that flat 7, then it's just an add 9. That makes sense? Finally, the dominant 9. That's that tense one we were talking about. The dominant 9, a dominant chord, again, if you've been playing guitar any amount of time, you've probably learned a 7, like a B7, an E7, or a C7, or an A7, just some kind of 7. Basically, it's a major chord with a flat 7 in it, making it dominant. Not to be confused with major 7, which is the pretty, that's the pretty 7, as opposed to the kind of the harsh, tense 7. Now, the dominant 9 just uses that 7, that flat 7, along with a 9. Very jazzy sounding. Let's take a look at E9 example. Just that's the shorthand, just E9, short for E dominant 9. That way you don't have to write E dominant 9 every time you write it out. 1, that's your E. 3rd, major 3rd is your G sharp. Then there's the flat 7, right there, D. And I'm actually going to be barring across these first 3 strings with the 3rd finger, hitting the D, the F sharp, which is our 9, and then the 5th, which is B. So we have 1, 3, flat 7, 9, 5. So you can think of it as a major 9 chord with a flat 7. You're going to be using that one a lot in jazzy songs. Thanks for coming to the show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Really appreciate it. All right. All right, so as a quick look at 9s and how to use 9s and chord variations, minors and majors and dominant. So there's 5 different chord variations. You can check the tabs on andrewsmusiccorner.com. It's going to have some of those chords charted out for you that you can take a look at, as well as some of the same chords in different places, just kind of for different sounds. So check that out. And also, if any of that was extremely confusing to you, you probably don't have a good grip on your scales, major scale and minor scale. Get to know those. I did some lessons on those. Go down the lesson archives at the bottom of the lesson of the week page on andrewsmusiccorner.com. You will find some lessons that I did on there. Now, granted, they're not video lessons, but that's okay. If you can read, it'll probably be helpful to you. All right, so play with some of these. There's so many chord variations that you can look at besides 9s, you know, like 13s and 11s and all kind of things. So hopefully we'll get into some of that later on. So if you have any other questions, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll just see you next week.